Every neighborhood has a heartbeat, a place that represents the cultural epicenter of the area at its core. In Boston's historic North End, that place is Boston Barber and Tattoo Company. Boston Barber and Tattoo Company has become home to A-list Boston celebrities like Gordon Hayward, Milan Lucic, Brad Marchand, and Aaron Baines. Boston Barber and Tattoo is more than just Boston's most well-known corner barbershop. It's also a tourist attraction for the hundreds and thousands of people that visit the North End throughout the year. Boston Barber and Tattoo, a North End landmark that represents the cultural epicenter of the area at its core, located at 113 Salem Street.
Welcome back. Another edition of Good and Plenty. I'm your host, Jeff Goodman, and today's Tuesday, so that means it's NBA time. And we've got a great guest, Bill Reiter from CBS, who covered LeBron extensively a few years ago, does a radio show in which he talks all sports, but he's an NBA guy, and he's got some great stories. Some stories of us, some stories of Chris Paul, a little bit of everything, Halloween candy. But first, please subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, CLNS Media. You can follow me at Goodman Hoops, also on WatchStadium.com. Today's show is brought to you by The Athletic. Get 40% off your monthly subscription just by going to theathletic.com/Goodman. Today's show also brought to you by Audible. For a free audiobook with your sign-up, go to audible.com/plenty or text plenty to 500-500. Now pleased to welcome into the podcast a guy I've known a long time, and a guy that we've had some good stories to tell together, including the first one when we met doing the Jim Rome show together. Neither one of us had done any TV, and we both kind of sucked that week. Bill Reiter, CBS Sports. You've blown up since. Like, you're everywhere. You do radio, you do TV. Like, you're a star now.
Jeff Goodman, I don't know about that, but I've come a long way from sitting in that pretend green room in SoCal, sweating like that scene from Broadcast News, just terrified of going on with Jim Rome.
Who was more nervous, you think?
I don't know. I was definitely sweating more.
Yeah, you were dripping.
We were both sweating a lot.
Yeah.
I was coated in my own fear, and that was before we even got out there. I would say it was an equal amount of nervousness, but I feel like mine expressed itself in physical tells, like the disgusting fear sweats.
You still owe me from that week. I mean, like, big time. You still have not really paid me back for the experience that I gave you.
Down?
Yeah. I mean, like, how great was that? We're on the set. Josh Hopkins, a friend of mine who's a huge Kentucky fan. I don't want to say those two things in the same sentence because every Kentucky fan will hate Josh Hopkins from here on out if I make it known. But he was on Cougar Town, so he got us both onto the set. We're in L.A. We drove out. I think it was like midweek, right? We finished taping at Rome. We shot down
Tuesday
there.
Or Wednesday or Thursday.
Yeah. Shot down there. Go down. We get on the set, and I'm pretty sure you were more nervous there than you actually were with Rome. You were super excited to meet Courtney Cox. And then
I was, and Hopkins threw me off because he was like playing music in his dressing room, singing songs. Like, what has happened? It was just another. You were very comfortable. I was like, man, I'm just a kid from Iowa. What is happening here?
Yeah, and he had a big Kentucky poster up in his dressing room. Remember?
He did. He did. Yes, he did. And then, do you want me to tell this this Courtney Cox story?
Of course.
We go down there, right? And we're sitting with everybody but Courtney. Sitting with the cast. They're all drinking wine. If memory serves, were we on director's chairs? It felt like we were on director's chairs.
I think we were.
It felt very big time.
Yeah.
And she comes out of the set, out of the living room from the show. And the way I remember it, Jeff, is that time stops, right? Even though we're inside, the sun shines on her. Her hair is blowing in slow motion. She walks toward us like some kind of actress goddess, right? Like, everything is just honed in to her walking. I know you're sitting next to me, but in my imagination, in my memory, it's her just walking to me. And then, like, after, 20 minutes of the slow motion walk, she walks up to us. I don't know if she needed a lozenge or had a cold, and she goes, "Hi there, I'm Courtney." I'm like, "Oh my God!"
You almost fell over.
But what it is, I did, and I wasn't drinking the wine, so it wasn't me. Yeah, I'll never. Yeah, it really. I don't know. It's just her voice was a little different than I expected.
It was a great experience, though. It was pretty fun. I mean, it was pretty fun because, again, we were both kind of new. You know, since then, you've been in L.A. How many years did you live in L.A. before you moved back to New York?
I lived in LA for 4.5, and when I got the radio show at CBS Sports Radio, and then moved to New York, did the show for maybe a month or 5 weeks before I moved because my kids had to finish school, so there was some overlap, right, where I was going to New York and Lori and the kids weren't coming with me. And I don't know if I ever told you this, the radio station where I did the show from was next to the lot where Cougar Town was filmed. I walked by it every day, and every day I would think to myself, like in 5 or 6 years, thanks to Jim Rome and Jeff Goodman and that sort of whole beginning, because I think I've told you this, that Jim Rome show is how some executives at Fox Sports 1 saw me and figured out who I was and eventually moved me to L.A. for TV, which led to radio, and it all began with Jim Rome and Cougar Town.
You know what it was? You were next to me.
What was it?
You were next to me, and I was so bad. That just by bad. Default, you looked really good. Yeah, we were pretty bad. I said Peyton Manning's career was over. That was like 8 years ago.
You attribute to me kind words about Dwight Howard that I don't believe is true. I got to find the tape.
We need to find the tape because I know you were complimentary of Dwight Howard. You don't remember it, but we kind of argued on Dwight Howard. I said that he would never win an NBA title no matter who he played with unless that was LeBron James. And I believe you fought me on that. Listen, I got a question for you. I had an experience Saturday night, and I want to know what you would do if this happened to you. Maybe it has happened to you. My wife and I go out to a movie, and then we're going out for dinner and drinks. So we're at the movie, and we go to this. She picked it. It was like a Susan Sarandon movie that was in like 2 theaters. It actually was a pretty good movie that just came out. And we go about 20 minutes away, and it's in the nice like reclining seats, whatever. So we get in there, and there's only 3 other people in there, and it's 3 like teenage boys. They're like, I'd say about 15. Okay, so we're down at one end.
What is this movie?
I'll try to remember the name of it. It was pretty good, actually. It was pretty good. So they're down at the end, and they got their phones on. One of them's lying across a couple chairs. They're talking. Later on, they were vaping. They're getting up and down like 3 times. They leave the theater after 20 minutes, so I think they're done. Come back in. Leave again 10 minutes later. Come back in. Leave again 10 minutes later. Then they came back in, and that's when I said something to them. I'm like, can you just like sit down? Just sit down. And they started saying stuff to me. And I'm like, all right, I'm with my wife. I'm not going to get into it with them, whatever. They sit down at this point, and now they're being loud. Now they're like talking, burping, whatever they're doing. My wife finally says something to them. One of them starts to talk back and says, well, you sound like my school teacher. Ooh. My wife says, well, listen, I'm going to go and then I'm going to tell the people outside that, you've been vaping or whatever, and we're going to get you removed. So she leaves. So that's when I started kind of going at him. That's when she goes to get somebody. I start to go at him, and I'm dropping F-bombs. I'm like, you better shut the you-know-what up. Like, shut the over and over and over. 2 of them were fairly one of them was respectful. One of them was kind of in the middle, and one of them was just a complete little shit. Anyway, so the movie keeps going. The guy comes back in. He watches for 30 seconds. They were on their best behavior, and then he leaves. Great job by that guy. So at the end of the movie, this is where the fun started. The movie ends. They come out. I'm waiting for them as they walk out the door, okay? The door of the movie theater. And I'm taking pictures of them. Okay, and I said, I can't wait to tweet this to my 250,000 followers so your mom can see it. So one of them was like, whatever.
It's aggressive.
Yeah. Well, the kid didn't realize, and then I think my wife, I didn't hear it. She was like, yeah, I hope you don't play basketball or something like that. The other one puts his hood on, and he starts talking shit to me. Another one puts his hood on. So I get a picture of one. Then this one starts talking crap. And he's putting his hood on to hide his face. I start chasing him down the hallway of the theater. Chasing him.
You're so aggressive.
taking pictures, just screwing with them. Completely screwing with them, taking pictures. My wife's following me, yelling at me to stop. I literally chased this kid like deep into the parking lot outside. Messing around with them. Then the three of them, my wife's then at this point, like, she's pissed at me. She's like, it's our anniversary. Like, what the hell are you doing?
Your anniversary? Oh, Jeff.
Yeah. So anyway,
romantic.
Can you tell? I'm so anyway, what would you have done in that situation? What did I do wrong? Because you can't. What can you do?
I had a similar situation on Halloween.
Okay.
Do you want to hear this?
Yeah.
I almost got in a fight with like 15, 16-year-olds.
Okay.
I live in Brooklyn, New York, right? And I work days for the TV show and nights for the radio show. So I'm not, like most sports writers, TV hosts, radio people, I'm not around a lot. So I took Halloween off to hang out with my kids, kind of special day for my kids. And after the trick-or-treating, my son Henry, who's only 6, he was exhausted. So we went back to the house. We have a stoop, the apartment in Brooklyn, and we're trick-or-treating, and we have tons of candy, but we're starting to run out. And 17, 15, 16, a pack of high school kids are walking on the street, dropping F-bombs, doing their thing, whatever, kids everywhere. And they see the candy, and the first kid says to me, "Give me some effing candy right now." And they're not in costume. Yeah. So I say, "No, that's not how you ask. That's not how you ask. Don't use that language for my kid." And long story short, it digresses where some of the kids are demanding candy with the F-bomb. Some of the kids are asking nicely. The kids are asking nicely. I'm giving them Heath bars. But I've just broken out the Reese's peanut butter cups, which are the high-end stuff. And one of the kids comes over that I've said no to and like puts his hand in the thing and pulls out a Reese's peanut butter cup and goes, "F you, I'm taking the peanut butter cup." So I grab his wrist, and he's like, "Let go of me." I'm like, "Let go of the peanut butter cup." And at this point, I was like, "Cameron, go inside and get mommy real quick. Go get daddy some water." So he's not around for this.
Yeah.
And long story short, we had a showdown. And I was like, "Do you really want to get into it over a Reese's peanut butter cup?" Because all my neighbors are paying attention, and then all the kids left. But I guess the answer to your question is, this is the short version of a 10-minute altercation. I would do exactly what you did, which is lose my temper, overreact,
sucks,
and be a little aggressive.
It sucks. And we were talking about it, and we're like, would we have been that way back when we were their age in terms of being like disrespectful?
Not to an adult.
Right. That's the
difference.
difference.
I would have got my ass kicked by my dad.
Me too.
Yeah.
Like, I want to tweet the kid's picture. I really do. I got like a couple pictures that if I tweeted it, I'm pretty sure that I could track down his parents and just be like, "Your son was a little shit. This is what he did." I'm not wasting my time with it. But it was, I was kind of questioning myself. And really what I was doing is thinking, "Oh, shit, I hope nobody took video of this, of me sprinting down."
That's the problem, is like that could be taken out, a buddy of mine who's in the business that we're in, right? Like me, not incredibly well known, but well known enough that you'd be fired if you got caught, drinking and driving, which you should never do. Or what? He had a similar incident at a bar in Brooklyn where a girl slapped him, and he didn't leave, and she slapped him again, and then she said, and I wasn't there. This is him telling the story, right? Then she started telling people at the bar that he had put his hands on her, but no people had seen that that wasn't true. She got kicked out. But I'm like, bro, you can't be if someone films her hitting you, and it becomes a story. I think for you and the difference between my story and your story is I'm sitting on my property at my stoop with my kid. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, I'm chasing a kid. I'm literally chasing a kid through a parking lot just to scare the hell out of him. I wasn't going to do anything, obviously, but just to scare the shit out of him. And my wife's like, "It didn't work. Like, the kid's not going to change what he did or what he does because of that. In fact, it'd probably go the opposite. He'll probably do it again and do it worse." Quick break to tell you today's show is brought to you by The Athletic. If you haven't heard about The Athletic by now, you must be living under a rock. These guys have been crushing every element of sports coverage imaginable. Whether you're looking for specific local coverage with beat guys, sports discussed under a national lens, or anything in between, you got to make sure you take a look at The Athletic. No pop-ups, no ads, high-quality content waiting behind every single click. Zach Harper, Frank Isola, Sam Amick, who was a guest on this show, Shams Charania, also a guest on this show and a colleague of mine. They have you covered on everything NBA related. If college is more your style, then make sure you check out Seth Davis, Dana O'Neill, Brian Hamilton. You can't get content like this anywhere else. 600 to 750 new articles a week. Who else is pushing out quality content like this? If you haven't signed up yet, Take advantage of this deal because it's not going to last. Go to theathletic.com/Goodman. Get 40% off your monthly subscription. That's a subscription for less than $3 a month just by going to theathletic.com/Goodman. Shams, Amick, Harper, Seth Davis, Dana O'Neill, all for less than $3 a month. Sign me up. Sign yourself up to theathletic.com/Goodman. All right, let's move on to some NBA stuff. Those were our stories. How quickly can you tell your Chris Paul story? Because I'm seeing him tonight.
You give me the amount of time you want me to tell it in, and I will tell it in. Right. I did a 15-minute version on radio, but you tell me, and I can condense it all the way down.
Do it a condensed Cliff Notes version, 2 minutes, only because I'm seeing him tonight. We're taping this on Monday. I'm seeing him play the Pacers in Indianapolis, so I can definitely use a good Chris Paul story. Go ahead.
Definitely tell him I say hi. So here's the very short version. Back in my Fox Sports 1 days, I would do sit-down, one-on-one interviews with athletes, LeBron James, Dwight Howard, James Harden, Mike D'Antoni, whatever, big names, right? And like you, I come from a journalism background, and I always thought it was appropriate to ask a difficult but fair question. I didn't want it to be a sycophantic, interview. So I had a 3-way interview with Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, to multiple cameras. Each guy is on an ISO shot and on a 3-way shot. They had canceled a couple times. We had booked at FS1 a pretty expensive crew that cost $30,000 or $40,000 a hit. So by the third time, everybody's nerves are pretty high, right? Including mine. Okay. Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan come in. And long story short, I'd actually written really positive things about these guys. It's like 3 years ago, maybe a year before the DeAndre Jordan pretend exit for Dallas.
Okay.
And I had GMs when I was doing NBA stuff every day who had told me, I always call sources before these interviews, what should I ask? And I had GMs who said, I don't believe Blake Griffin's working on his jump shot. I don't believe he's going to evolve his game as the game evolves away from him, which it turned out to be not true. But anyway, asked Blake that question. He didn't appreciate it. Very long story short, every time I'd ask a question to Blake or DeAndre or Chris would look at me on camera and say to me, that's the dumbest question I've ever heard. You're such an effing idiot. You're such a moron. Then he would smile, because he's very good at television, and he would answer the question, right? And it was an amazing answer. Blake and DeAndre, not being as savvy, not being as mature, didn't understand that Chris was creating this sort of negative atmosphere, but then answering the question in an intelligent way, in a smart way, in a very savvy way, in order to look good on camera.
Sure.
So this thing sort of disintegrates into Blake Griffin tells me to do something that's anatomically impossible to myself and turns his microphone off, unbeknownst to me. DeAndre Jordan looks like he's going to wet himself and just wants to be anywhere but there because he's a nice kid who is being bullied by the right. And Chris is just mean mugging me, but doing the interview. And when the interview gets done, and look, I've been,
you kept doing it. You kept going through the whole interview like this.
I did. I actually hadn't asked a difficult question yet. So I was like, all right, here we go, right? So the interview ends, and Chris, and we're at the Clippers facility, and Chris had been fairly disrespectful to some of the crew members, which, I don't know, just you by all means come after me. I have a microphone, I have a column. Yeah. Don't pick on the sound guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, guy's intimidated by it. It's unnecessary. So for whatever reason, I don't know the reason, Chris just starts and I was professional. I just kept asking the questions and took it like you have to, right? Chris just starts screaming at me, and my memory is it's 10 or 15 minutes, probably more like 5, right? But F-bombs, F you, who do you think you are? And it devolves. It's a few years after I covered LeBron. I've been pretty hard on LeBron, but LeBron and I had gotten right, so I don't really know the context of this. It devolves into Chris screaming, do you know LeBron James? You think you know LeBron better than me? It was very weird. I'm trying to talk to him. He's screaming at me. And it was really ugly and across some lines, but it's part of the deal. To my surprise, Jeff, so many people in that Clippers organization, because I wasn't well-sourced there. I'd had some issue with a former vice president named Joe Safety. I just wasn't uber connected there, right?
Okay.
Other than with Ballmer, who I'd interviewed several times. So to my surprise, sources began, people in that organization, a lot of people have been sort of isolated by Doc, kept on, but weren't allowed to have any real decision-making power, reached out over the next few weeks to apologize and took me out for drinks, took me out for lunch. I'm sorry, doesn't reflect your organization, and told me what a disaster of a person Chris Paul was as a basketball player and what a phony he was. So I used a sort of Chris Paul blow-up story to report a story that I broke that DeAndre hated Chris and wanted to leave before the Mavericks thing. And all of that is the short version to tell you Chris might be a good husband, which everyone stressed, and a good father, which everyone stressed. But that experience, what I saw, and the people who came out of the woodwork to talk to me, and then the story that I wrote, which led more Chris Paul detractors to reach out. You know, when you become the sort of repository for accurate negative reporting about someone, they come out of the woodwork. I became a clearinghouse for just Chris Paul is a phony stories. And so when Rondo punched Chris in the face and then gave his spiel about Chris being a phony, it reflected every bit of reporting and writing I've done on Chris Paul. It reflected every story I've told on radio of Chris Paul. It was like some of the sources in that Clippers organization from several years ago speaking through Rondo. Chris Paul is the biggest phony, is the most pretentious, two-faced person I've ever been around in sports, and that's saying something because I've covered everything but hockey.
You know, I've heard that too from multiple people. You know, people that will tell you, listen, on the court, his work ethic is tremendous. You know, the way he plays pickup, everything he does is with a purpose on the court. But off the court, again, his reputation. Now, if you ask LeBron, obviously you're going to get a different answer. But a lot of people who have played with Chris Paul feel like the word they've used, and I've said this on this podcast, is phony. I had a quick. I'll give you.
You know what he is?
Yeah, go ahead.
They're the. You remember the movie Mean Girls?
Yeah.
It's like the Banana Boat crew are the mean girls of the NBA. I mean, they like each other, but and you know this, and I won't pretend to know Houston. I'm not connected there, and I haven't had to be a day-to-day NBA reporter in a few years, so I can't. Maybe Chris has rehabilitated himself, but before Houston, and I would venture to say, since people don't change, probably now too, people didn't like playing with the guy. It wasn't just the media, right? Like, we get treated that way all the time. It's rare when a guy also treats his teammates that way, which is the MO on that dude.
So I remember seeing him a few years ago. It was the year that the whole Donald Sterling situation blew up, and Doc Rivers had said on the record that he wasn't sure whether he would coach if Donald Sterling remained the owner. So Chris was running. Yeah. They have like an AAU event out in Vegas every summer that he runs, and like Carmelo is coaching a team, Chris is coaching a team, different NBA players are. So after the game, I talked to Chris maybe 10, 15 minutes, and, you know, part of the conversation is talking to him about running the AAU program. Obviously, part of it was talking to him about Donald Sterling and whether he would play if Sterling stayed the owner. So, you know, I got done with him, wrote the story. Obviously, the lead was about whether or not he would play for Sterling if he was the owner still. And I get a call back like an hour later from an angry, not angry, like he wasn't like volatile, he wasn't raising his voice at all, but like you said, almost like very measured, but very upset of how could you possibly run this story with my comments on Donald Sterling. This was a conversation about the AE team. I said, no, it wasn't, Chris. Like people don't care really nationally. People cared what you thought of Donald Sterling and whether you're going to play for him or not, and whether you're considering not playing if he remains the owner. And every time since, he won't even look at me. I mean, like I remember NBA draft. I did the NBA draft a couple years ago. He was there. And I'll try to be like cordial, but I really don't care because it doesn't matter to me. But anyway, all right. So the Rockets now.
Well, let me add this too. Let me add this too because I think it's fascinating. The thing about Chris that's weird too is normally people respond this way when you are negative to them, when you write negatively about them. Chris was that Clippers group was a rare group that I had written pretty universally positively about. And after that altercation, because it was ugly, I can't remember. I'm sure it's in the public somewhere. I either voted for Chris or for Blake, or maybe for both, in the top 5 for MVP that year. So the other thing that struck me about the guy is that it's not personal for me, but it's interestingly personal for Chris in a way that a lot of other athletes, in my experience, get it or get past it.
Yep. Today's show is also brought to you by Audible. I think we all know that Audible has the largest selection of audiobooks you'll find anywhere. Go ahead and search for something. I recently went on and found out Jim Calhoun's book, A Passion to Lead, is on there. First off, what a story. One of the greatest coaches, not just in UConn history, but in college basketball history. He narrates the book himself. A former colleague of mine at ESPN, Ian O'Connor, just wrote a book about New England Patriots head coach Bill Belichick that the entire internet is raving about. But now Audible wants to introduce you guys to Audible Originals, exclusive titles created by celebrated storytellers from around the world, from different journalists, screenwriters, authors, and more. Every month, Audible members get 1 credit good for any book on Audible, plus they get 2 selections from Audible Originals. This is a deal you can't get anywhere else. You also get access to fitness and health tips created exclusively for Audible. Listen at home, the gym, in the car, wherever. Plus, with Audible, your books are yours to keep, even if you cancel your membership. Don't waste any more time. Get started for free today with Audible. Go to audible.com/plenty or text plenty to 500500 for a 30-day free trial with Audible, which comes with an audiobook. That's audible.com/plenty. Text the word plenty to 500500. Houston Rockets are now 3-5 going into, again, Tuesday night's game in Indiana. James Harden's missed a couple games. We know that. But, are you right now they're out of the playoffs. Are you in the belief that there's anything to be concerned with Houston? I mean, I don't think they're going to contend like they did a year ago, because I feel like losing Trevor Ariza and Luc Mbah a Moute was huge from a chemistry, defensive, intangible standpoint. Where are you with Houston?
I think that's exactly where I'm at. Like, what's the standard of, are they in trouble? Are they going to finish out of the playoffs? Absolutely not. Like, barring the return of James Harden and him being healthy enough to do what he does on the floor and stop and go to create the offense the way that he does, they're going to be a top 4 seed, I think. Maybe they'll be better than that. But I'm with you. I think the moment they got rid of those two guys, especially on the defensive end, they were trading away that secret sauce that made them great. I mean, no one talks about this because we're in an era of offensive ridiculousness. That team last year was 6th, I think, or 7th in defensive rating. A Mike D'Antoni team was nearly a top 5-10 in defense in the NBA. And they gave that away for, and I'm not trying to be a Melo hater. I've been hard on that guy my whole career, but Carmelo Anthony is a ball stopper. I mean, all the things we know that he is, he also just didn't get along and doesn't, at least didn't get along with D'Antoni back in the day. I was around that team during Linsanity. I don't understand what Daryl Morey is doing, and I'm with you. I think they will be fine in the context of, in a pretty crowded Western Conference, they'll be right where they're supposed to be. But I don't think they're even remotely a threat to the Golden State Warriors. And since they were a game away from the finals last year, that's probably the standard of success or failure compared to last year. So if that's the standard for Rockets fans, I'm extremely worried. And that's before you get into, again, what is the mix, what is the volatility, what is the chemistry on and off the court of Melo and Chris Paul and James Harden all on the same team under a coach in Mike D'Antoni, who I think is a brilliant guy. But you know this, Jeff. He's not exactly – his strength is not managing difficult personalities, massive egos, or tough confrontational conversations. Yeah, he's too nice a guy and a little – is it fair to say socially awkward in a way that, really bright people sometimes are? But yeah. I bumped into him at a movie once, and his wife and my wife, and we were trying to have a conversation. It was painful. I can't even imagine what it will be like if he's trying to manage the ego of Carmelo Anthony, not getting the shots that he wants, maybe not getting the minutes that he wants, and an aging Chris Paul and Harden and that defense that made everything okay because they won basketball games not being there. I'm not worried about the regular season per se, but I don't think they're a contender.
All right, a couple more things I want to get to. I know we don't have a ton of time here, but Derrick Rose goes for 50. 5-0.
Yeah.
50. Nobody saw this coming at all. He doesn't have the same explosiveness, the same gear he once had, but listen, it's impressive because he's kind of revamped his game a little bit. I'm happy for him. I didn't get along well, and I don't get along well with his brother. But I always liked Derrick, even though he wasn't media friendly in a sense, but he wasn't media unfriendly either. He just didn't enjoy it. He didn't have a lot to say to whether it's the media or even his teammates. After games, just kind of finish talking and he'd leave. And again, not disrespectful. But I really loved it watching it the other night and seeing Derrick Rose go for 50 and then get emotional after the game with everything that he's been through, especially physically. I thought it was pretty cool.
One of the biggest solids anyone ever did for me ever was Derrick Rose. A very quick story, because you're right. He's not scrum friendly. He doesn't want to be wooed. But I was doing the TV thing as like a sideline or a post-game reporter for FS1 when it launched, when I was there, and our producer sent us to the wrong place. And long story short, we were sent to Miami to interview Rose, some return game back when LeBron was still there. I think it might have been the opening game of the year. We missed it, and we got into the locker room, and he was one of 3 people in the room. He was dressed, and I literally bumped into him. He's walking out the door, I'm walking in, right? Like he's leaving for the night in Miami. And like an idiot, I go, "Are you done?" And he's like, "Yeah, bro." I'm like, shit, all right. He's like, everything all right? I'm like, I was supposed to, is there any way any way you'd stay? No, and the answer would be no. He's like, all right, man, how long do you need? I'm like, 5 or 10 minutes to set up. And the guy stayed for 20 minutes.
Did he really?
And he did not have a good game if memory serves. Wow. It was just one of those, like, I'm sure he saw the pain on my face. Like, I'm so fired.
Cool,
so to answer your question, yeah, and I had the same moment you've had where he's just not. Here's the thing about Derek, right? He's not a phony. Like, go back to the quiz. The guy is what he is.
Me too.
And I'm one of the people who I wrote him off. In fact, somebody made some sort of viral poster of all the comments people had made, how Derrick Rose's career was over.
You on there?
The first one.
Were you? Nice.
It was a very cutting, biting, like, whatever he does, his greatness retired years ago. And I want to be wrong. I don't know that, I don't know that he's going to repeat that excellence, but I would love to be wrong because, like a lot of us that covered, when I was covering LeBron, I was around that Derrick Rose Bulls team a lot those first few years, and they were still a threat. And the guy was a thing to behold, right? And we forget youngest MVP of all time and sort of the beginning of building something that was supposed to be long-lasting in Chicago. That's over, and I love, if nothing else, that there was a momentary return for him to being at the level he should have been if not for injury. I'm with you. It was I got emotional.
Did you start tearing? Did you get teary?
I did.
Wow.
I'm an emotional guy sometimes.
Jeez.
Yeah, I did. I know. And I watched it on replay. Like, I was worried, right? So I was like, I'll watch it. And I was like, oh, man, this is.
Were you by yourself? Were you by yourself, or was your wife next to you and you started hiding?
I was by like 1 a.m. in Brooklyn with a bourbon. So maybe it was just a long day at work. But yeah, I thought it was really, really cool.
His teammate Jimmy Butler continues to play this game of playing when he wants to play. Jimmy Butler, in your opinion, dick move, or are you behind him and how he's handling this?
I'm not behind him, although it's hard to blame him because he just saw this work with Kawhi Leonard, right? Depending on what you want to believe about Kawhi's situation. But Kawhi didn't want to be in San Antonio. He didn't play. They traded him at least for a year. He's in a really great situation. He got what he wanted. And I'm one of these guys, and maybe it's self-righteous, Jeff. Maybe it's because I work under contract like you work under contract, right? I'm a contract employee now. You sign your name on the dotted line. Maybe it sounds Pollyannish or self-righteous. Yeah. Play it out. I think you need to play it out. And I also hate it because, and this doesn't necessarily apply to Minneapolis because of the deal that Cat got, but I'm from the Midwest, and I lived in L.A. for work, and I live in New York now, but I'm from Iowa, and I worked in Kansas City at the Kansas City Star. That's where I'm from, and I want to see those markets have the opportunity to be successful. And if it gets to the point where superstars who are under contract in smaller or middle-of-the-country markets can just say, not only I don't want to be here, right? Like the next level from what Paul George did in Indy. It's I'm not even going to step foot on the court. I don't know how the system works. So I hate everything about it. I know Jimmy's a competitive guy. I recognize when he looks around at Wiggins and Cat making all this money and not playing defense and undercutting a window for him to have some relevance that he's frustrated. But life isn't fair, right? Like we've all had jobs. I've had jobs where I'm paid better than maybe I deserve, but the place isn't run the way that I'd like it to be. And I know that my situation, your situation is not Jimmy Butler's situation, but I hate it. I understand that there's nuance. I understand he's probably not a bad guy per se, but I think what he's doing, and in some ways emulating what Kawhi was doing, is really, really bad for the game. And so I can't get behind it, despite the reasons I understand why he's pissed off.
Wouldn't you love to see like Glenn Taylor just like trade him for nothing to like Sacramento? Like nothing.
That is what absolutely. Banish him to like you think, because that's the thing about Kawhi is he won. I mean, Toronto, and you brought this up on the radio show the other day, they're legit. I mean, they're one of the two best teams in the Eastern Conference, and if Durant or Steph Curry decide that something they just don't like basketball anymore, maybe they're an actual contender. If Kawhi, It's not like Leonard got sent to purgatory for a year and has to wait out the Lakers, in some place where he's not relevant and he's not playing basketball that matters. It's the exact opposite. He gets to be the toast of the town again, the toast of the Eastern Conference, and I'm with you. Send Jimmy Butler. And the thing is, Sacramento, they'd send.
I think they should trade him to China, Bill. I think they should trade him to like China.
Yeah, the Singapore League, right?
Imagine
all 4 teams.
How great would that be? Hey, Jimmy, you're going to China. You've been traded to China or the G League.
Have you ever been to? But don't worry, we sent you to Beijing. It's a thriving metropolis. You're gonna love it.
You'll love it.
It'd be great.
Hey, Lakers are 4-6. I got to get your take on them before we finish this up. I mean, I've still been on record saying, like, I'm not worried. I know they just lost to Toronto without Kawhi, but I'm still not worried at the end of the day. I think this team is going to come together, and I think they're going to be playing Golden State in the Western Conference Finals. I'm sticking with it.
I want to disagree with you on something. I agree. I think you're right.
You're not worried
here's the thing. History repeats itself, and we always forget. They were 9-8 that first year that LeBron went to Miami, and I was there. People thought the sky was falling. I wrote columns that the sky was falling. It was quite enjoyable. And people forget this. LeBron leaked a story to Broussard. Broussard carried water for LeBron. Sorry, Broussard's your guy. And trying to get Spoelstra fired. 17 games in. We all know the history. Riley back.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. That's right.
They figured it out.
Yep.
They made the finals. He returns to Cleveland, right? And that team, that's not that long ago. That team, I think it's January 14th of LeBron's return here to Cleveland, is 19-20. It's mid-January, and they're under 500.
People are freaking
out.
Yeah.
Everybody freaked out. People want Blatt gone. Blatt went not that year, the following year. But that team made the NBA Finals. Just having been around LeBron, having embedded myself in that guy's world for a year and a half, it's weird. He changes the physics around him, and I don't think people understand that, even when they understand it from a distance or they think they know. Magic Johnson, that young group of guys, the veterans on who joined LeBron on that team because Magic gave him one-year deals, Luke Walton, Jeannie Buss, I think she's a great owner. I really do. I don't think you can understand what it's like to be in the eye of the hurricane that is LeBron James until you're in it. So most NBA teams need 20, GM or coach tell you 20 or 25 games to evaluate a team and for a team to figure themselves out. LeBron James in a new place, I think it's 40 to 50. And I know that's a big chunk of the season, but I'm not worried at all. This is exactly what happens with LeBron. And I actually think they're a much more talented team than they were last year. And I think they'll be just fine. They will make the playoffs, and they will lose in the playoffs whenever they run into Golden State, whatever side of the bracket they're on.
Yeah, I just think they've got enough talent. Like you said, it's going to take a little bit of time. LeBron's not shooting the ball that well. Kuzma's not shooting the ball well from three. He was never a great shooter in college anyway from three, so I'm not sure if last year was a little bit of an aberration or not. But I think, again, you got to get Ingram going, which he will. They've got enough good young pieces and some veterans. Right now you're looking at some teams that are ahead of them. San Antonio, Memphis, Sacramento, the Clippers. Like, they're going to pass all those teams. Are they going to be the 2 or 3 seed? I don't know. I mean, to me, if I'm them, I'd probably rather be the 6th seed at the end of the day.
I agree, dude. And by the way, like the 3 points, remember everybody was freaking out a week ago, 3 games in, they don't know 3-point shooting. I mean, hard to find 3-point shooter. Right. You and I have discussed this. You know Lonzo. I like Lonzo a lot as a player. Quietly, his shot has improved.
Yep. Ingram's fine. Ingram.
I love Ingram.
He'll make enough threes. He'll be open. Rondo's even making threes because nobody guards him. So
I know.
Half of
LeBron. Half of them.
LeBron is the one guy who's really not shooting it well from three, and he's not a great shooter, but that number will go up. I think he's just trying to figure out his teammates, like you said, because these are all young guys that are, trying to figure out where they fit in and how to play with LeBron. And obviously, he's got the ball in his hands a lot, which affects Lonzo. That was the one thing to me that was going to take some time is when Lonzo's on the court with LeBron, people will say they don't, when I say they need the ball in their hands, I mean they're both really good at passing the basketball. So while Lonzo doesn't dribble, he advances it, you still need to have him touch the ball on every possession because, frankly, he and LeBron have similar court vision that's, on par with very few in the NBA right now.
And we saw this with Spoelstra, and we saw this when he went back with Blatt. I don't know if the guys are overthinking it or not, but it's hard to figure out, to your point, rotations for LeBron. And I saw a stat that the Lakers have some ridiculous number of rotations they've already run, combos out there on the floor. It's just playing the puzzle game of who to fit with LeBron is always – and Ingram, too, to your point, Jeff. I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but last year he had the ball in his hand a pretty good amount of the time. He's going to have to figure that out as well, but he's LeBron. He's the best player on earth. He's a freak of nature. They're going to be – there are a lot of teams that I'm worried about. The Lakers are not even on the list.
Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on. I'm still waiting. You got to come up with something good, some sort of way to pay me back for that Cougar Town deal. So I don't know what you got, what types of
What are
connections
what are
got.
you after?
I don't know. I don't want Halloween candy. Whatever it is, I don't want Halloween candy from you.
I can get you into Wimbledon. I can get you into Wimbledon if we
Seriously?
go together.
Is that
Can we
true?
go to London together? It is true.
Like the real Wimbledon, you can get me into.
A buddy of mine, we did a podcast together. I'm not going to say it because it's a name drop, but he's a member, and he has unlimited tickets, and he's just like, yeah, I mean, you got to go to London for that. But maybe me and you, my wife, can go to London sometime. We'll go to Wimbledon. We'll get into it with some 15-year-old ruffians from England, right?
You realize this year, I don't know if we could do it this year, but the Red Sox are playing, I believe, the Yankees right around Wimbledon. We were actually all talking about it this year, my wife, myself, and her family, because
in London?
Yeah, like within like 4 or 5 days of Wimbledon. Yeah.
I mean, it's always tough for me because of the finals, and the finals get done right into like.
Yeah, timing is tough.
Yeah.
But we got to figure it out.
That's
Maybe.
one. I'll think of something. I will try to think of something really, really cool for you. I do owe you, and there's got to be some amazing Courtney Cox like moment too. So let me just mull it over.
Done. All right. I know you got to run. Thanks for jumping on as always, and we'll talk soon.
You got it, buddy. Thanks.
Later, man. Thanks again for joining us. Another edition of Good and Plenty. The NBA edition is in the books. Thanks to my guest, Bill Reiter, with some good stories there, and certainly got some good Chris Paul info. We'll be back next week with another NBA edition. Every Thursday, also a College Hoops edition. Remember, please subscribe, iTunes, Stitcher, CLNS Media. You can find me at Goodman Hoops on Twitter. You can also find me at watchstadium.com. Thanks to my producer, Evan Valenti. And we will see you next Tuesday for the NBA edition again.
That was fine.
Yeah,
that worked.
Great. Let's do it again. Didn't love it. All
right, if you don't like it, let's do it again.
Yeah, I didn't love the very end. All right, here we go. Thanks again for joining us. Another edition of the Good and Plenty podcast in the books. Remember, every Tuesday, NBA edition. Every Thursday, College Hoops edition. Appreciate my guest this week, Bill Reiter of CBS Sports, joining us. Some great stories, including some Chris Paul info there that was interesting, no doubt about that. Remember, you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, on Stitcher, CLNS Media. You can follow me on Twitter at Goodman Hoops. I'm also at watchstadium.com. Thanks to my producer, Evan Valenti, and we will see you again, Tuesday and Thursday, NBA and College Hoops edition of Good and Plenty.